Joining us on the podcast today, we've got Kyle Hall, host of the Broadway Hat podcast, to talk a little New York Rangers. Kyle, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Anytime. Lots to discuss in New York Rangers land these days, because it was certainly an interesting offseason for you guys. I mean, Chris Drury's now the new GM. You've got Gerard Gallant as the new head coach. He went out and added a little bit of sandpaper after some incidents, we'll call them, last year in Reeves, and even Goodrow, a little bit of sandpaper to his game. So of all the changes that I've just rattled off, just off the top, like, which ones do you think are going to maybe have the most impact or maybe immediate dividends for the Rangers this season?
Gerard Galat. That's the biggest. I think of all the additions, everything they've done. Not saying David Quinn was a bad head coach. He had his, it was good and bad, David Quinn. But I just think Gallant just brings a whole new perspective to this team. From what I've heard, I've talked to a couple of beat reporters. I talked to even a player last year on the team, just said, like, they needed someone like that. They needed a guy who can come in, be a coach, not a team, not a friend, which seems like what he is. He's a coach first, but he's also kind of a player's coach where he lets them kind of do their own thing. Mm-hmm. So he's not babysitting anybody. They're adults, they're men. And I think they haven't named a captain yet. They'll be naming a captain hopefully in the next couple of days here. They said they want to name one before training camp ends. But I think this team has a lot of leaders on it, even though they don't have a captain named. And it had a kind of last year, the whole thing with Wilson, it kind of came up like, okay, they don't have any leadership on this team, or no one stood up. And that was not completely true because you had Chris Kreider, who was a leader, that was out. Jacob Trouba was out. It was a lot of guys not in the lineup that night, which I think, looking back on it, if one of those two guys was in the lineup, I think they handled that night, and it's just not a non-issue the next day, to be honest with you. A guy like Anthony Potetto, who was a seventh defenseman, he was in the lineup the next game when all the fights happened. If he was in the lineup, I think they handled that day. It was just something that I wish they handled that day, and it didn't progressively go on. But I think Gallant just brings that kind of just a professional attitude with him. He's won everywhere he's been. He's had some weird exits from places, which I still haven't gotten a feel of why he left places or what happened there. But it seems like everyone I've talked with, they're really, like, a lot of Vegas people have said that they're like great hire, which, that's what I took it from. A couple Florida Panthers writers I've emailed and talked about. They're like, oh, he was really good. We don't know why he left. Vegas is like, he was really good. We're not really sure what happened, but he was really good. So I just hope the don't leave part happens, but I'll take the very good.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you're getting rave reviews from a former employer, that's got to bode well, at least confidence-wise there. But if we follow that train of thought a little bit there, like, what kind of a team do you think, or maybe even style of play, Gallant is really preaching for the Rangers this year? Like, have you noticed just even in preseason or training camp, like, an emphasis on any particular aspect that maybe the former regime wasn't putting a priority on?
I think so he said they're going to be similar in their, positioning and stuff like that. Like, it's a lot of similar stuff with that. But I think that one of the things that Quinn, he had a couple rules, like, 2 passes on break. He had like weird rules that he did, which I think those are gone now. Mm-hmm. And a lot of guys, like, I had Ryan Spooner on my show, and Spooner talked about, like, he'd have to worry about stick handling in the zone, and then you got to race back on defense and, skate as hard as you can to one spot instead of picking up your man. You want you to a spot, which he said was just weird. And he kind of felt like it was almost like, he used the word ecology because that's where Quinn came from. But yeah, I feel like guys like Ryan Strome kind of came out and said there's a lot more, I guess, you can be like more of an individual player. Like, you don't have to go to these, do what he was saying. So I think with Gallant, you'll see these guys kind of open up a little bit, maybe a little more flow their offensive game. But the interesting thing with Gallant that I've seen is he's putting a lot of, which I guess Quinn did last year too, but he's putting a lot of stock in these young guys to play on the penalty kill. Mm-hmm. Alexis Lafreniere was killing penalties last night. Capo Caco seems like he's going to be a regular on the penalty kill. And I think when the Rangers didn't make that shift last year and putting Pavel Buchnevich, who Ranger fans, I think, cringe now every time they hear his name. When they put him on the penalty kill, a lot of people are like, what are you doing? But it actually turned out pretty well. He was already a solid defensive forward, but it actually brought a little bit of an offensive element to that penalty kill. And, I think Zibanejad is one of the top penalty killers the Rangers have had for numerous years now. And he gets so many chances on the penalty kill because, just his aggressive forechecking style. So having those two guys in the penalty kill, I think is going to be a pretty good. I mean, who knows how they'll do out there, but I think from an offensive upside, you can actually get a little upside on the penalty kill. And I think that's an interesting thing I saw. And also he preaches just, playing tough and defending your players and stuff like that, which we saw last night with PK Subban kind of slew-footed Ryan Reeves, who they have no injury update on him, but he seems like he's going to be out maybe for a little bit of time here. But, Chris Kreider went after PK Subban right away. Even Adam Fox, I don't think I've ever seen him hit anybody, went right after PK Subban the next shift. So like Ryan Strome basically hit him with a butt on the stick and took a penalty, but at least they had four guys right away defending their guy, which I think last year, because of what happened, you see it now. But really before that happened, there wasn't a lot of guys that were, really defending each other. So that's a nice new wrinkle to this team. And I think that extra sandpaper on the lineup also helps people play a little bigger and a little tougher, knowing that they got, a Barclay Goodrow or a Sammy Blake or a Ryan Reeves behind them.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there maybe one player in particular that you think might be in line for, call it whatever you want, a breakout season, or even just a better season than they had under the previous coaching regime there, under this new system, under Gallant?
Yeah, it's Lafreniere. I think Lafreniere he's ready to pop this year. He put on weight. He got faster and heavier this offseason. And I was joking around a couple of people. I'm like, when you're in your 30s and you can put on weight, you don't get faster. That's definitely not a thing. But when you're 20 years old or 19 years old, you can get faster and bigger. And that's the thing, like him and Kakko, they're 20 years old, 19 years old. They're filling out their bodies still. These are still kids. If they weren't number one, number two picks, Kakko probably would still be playing a couple of years over in Europe, and Alexis Lafreniere would be playing junior and then playing in the AHL probably. So, it's crazy that they're in the NHL, and it was a lot of high expectations. But I think Lafreniere is gonna have a good year this year. He's gonna be playing on the top line with Mika Zibanejad, who again he missed all training camp last year with COVID. Came back the first time he put on skates was 2 days before the opening night, and he looked lost for the first 3 months of the season, or 2 months of the season. That he finally got going a little bit, but I expect him to kind of get it back to a 40-goal scorer. I expect Lafreniere to have a 30-goal season with him. He's looked great in training camp. And then Panarin, as long as he avoids any of the, off-ice Russian issues and everything else that happened last year, that craziness, he'll be right there, I think, for a Hart Trophy consideration. And if that all happens, the Rangers will be in a good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, lots to unpack just even in that answer there. But like you were saying, right? Like Lafreniere, number one overall pick, pretty high expectations. But then you throw in the fact that number one, you're a teenager playing against grown men. Number two, there's now a global pandemic going on and all these weird protocols. The divisions are all reshuffled. It's a condensed schedule. So there's really a lot going against him. So I think some of the fans who maybe soured on the Lafreniere experience a little bit quicker in season one there, what's a realistic projection you can see him doing this season, maybe points wise, assuming he is healthy and he stays on that top line for the whole season? You just mentioned 30 goals. Are we in line for a 70-point season ish, or
I have 55 points. I think 55 points is probably where he'll, if Zibanejad scoring goals, though, he can get up there, depending on how many secondary assists he has. But he also has a guy named Adam Fox back there who's just an assist machine. So anytime you touch the puck before Fox touches the puck, very good chance you're going to get a secondary assist on a goal. But yeah, I think Lafreniere, you're probably going to get 55 to 60 points out of him. I mean, you need to. The Rangers need it. If he doesn't do that, they're in deep trouble, because he'll probably move down to a third line role, because you can't have that in your top line and not produce. But like you said, 19 or 18-year-old in New York City for the first time ever leaving home, global pandemic, meeting his new teammates, had a 10-day training camp, go out on the ice, go do something. And he took, I think it was 5 or 6 games to score his first goal. He finally scored that game winner in Buffalo. And that kind of got him rolling. Towards the end of the year, he could see the confidence was picking up. So, and again, like, he's looked great in training camp. He's looked great in the preseason. He had that game winner against Boston the other night where he made an unbelievable play coming in and knocking the puck down out of the air from the goaltender and then having a nice backhand goal there. But I'm very excited about his season this year. It's easy to say the number one pick from last year is going to have a breakout year. But I mean, he only had 20 points the year before. So I do think, you can say it's a breakout year.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who haven't really paid attention to maybe his amateur career there, Adam Fox, who you just mentioned, maybe came out of nowhere to them. But like, if you actually paid attention to his US, development team and his college career and all of that, like those who know within the Rangers organization have known and been very high on Adam Fox for a while. So when he goes out and he wins the Norris, maybe it was a little bit earlier than some people kind of projected him to win it, but they definitely saw that potential of a future blue chip, blue line prospect and, potential Norris trophy winning blue liner in the future for sure. So do you think now that the secret is out and teams are maybe pre-game planning a little bit more for him, putting a little bit more emphasis on, okay, where's Fox on the ice when they're doing their pre-game film evaluations and all of that? Like, do you think he's going to be able to replicate that same level of success, or do you think he's maybe not like a full-on regression, but just a step back from the unbelievable season that he was able to put together in 2020?
I mean, honestly, I think he's going to stay the same as he was last year. I think he's just going to have he's so good. He's so good. You watch him out there. And again, I talk with guys on the team like Zach Jones, a young defenseman. He said that he's the smartest player he's ever played with. Anthony Potetto, he told me that his like vision is just like, unlike he sees the ice so well. The game has come so slow to him. And then I've talked with other guys who are, also involved with the team. They say like, he's just so even keeled and like so calm, like nothing. The Norris Trophy was like a huge deal to him, but you see him like, they put Norris on his shirt. He was like embarrassed by it. Like the first day of training camp, he had Norris on his back of his nameplate, and he like laughed it off and like, but he just like not that kind of a guy. So I don't think like that success is going to get to his head. But like you said, with teams game planning for him, you play the same teams every game last year in your division, and that's when he won the Norris. So like, if you weren't figuring him out in the 8 games you played against him, what else you could do, to stop him? But his vision is unbelievable. His passing is unbelievable. He's not going to have a 100-mile-an-hour slap shot from the blue line to score a goal, but he's going to move in, dance around the blue line, move in, and basically you and I could have a stick in front of the net, and he's going to touch it off the stick and go in. Just the kind of player he is. I will say this, like, he's probably the most disrespected Norris Trophy winner in recent years. I mean, I've gone back and forth with people about, his EA Sports ratings in 87. Team USA named their first 3 players today, and they named Seth Jones as a defensive, guy over him.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff like, who wins the Norris this year? And he was like the 4th person on the list. So it's like, what else does this guy have to do to earn some respect, in the league? But if you want to consider him like an underrated player, so that's fine. Don't worry about him then. He'll be fine. But
yeah,
he's awesome to watch. And he's a Long Island guy. I'm from Long Island. So it's pretty cool to see a kid from like your area. It's not a real hockey hotbed dominate the league like he did like that. But like you said, like he had a good year a good career at Harvard. And teams knew like he was good. He dropped to the 3rd round. I think Clayton Keller just came out and said like he was telling teams like, this kid's a 1st-round pick. Like, he's small, but like you're gonna be really upset when you don't take him, just from like playing within the U.S. national team. But like Carolina traded for him from Calgary, so like obviously people knew there was talent there. Calgary kind of got railroaded. I mean, Carolina got railroaded by him at the end there when he basically told him not playing. I want to go to New York, which was great for the Rangers, but. Yeah, we need to see him get an extension hopefully soon. I think the longer you wait for him, the higher his price is going to go up. Hopefully he gives him a hometown discount because he is a Ranger fan through his entire life. His parents are season ticket holders, all that, great, storyline to that. But I want to see him get a contract soon, lock him on for 8 years, have him retire a Ranger. You know, you want to see the next Brian Leetch minus the trading him off to Toronto at the end there. But that's what you want to see for as a Ranger fan.
Yeah, absolutely. And as an Ottawa-based podcast here, we can speak from experience that the sooner you can get these things locked up, the better, because it's not a fun, prolonged negotiation period. But
yeah, I'm sure.
Anyways, we won't go down that rabbit hole. But I mean, in nets, you guys have probably one of the most envious positions in the league because you guys have a pair of young 25-year-old goaltenders there who both of them, on any given night are extremely serviceable NHL bona fide ready goaltenders. And I mean, do you see either one of them truly emerging this year as a workhorse, or given the fact that if you even look at Gallant's track record in Vegas, in Florida, he's always kind of been that tandem guy, whether it's been Fleury and Leonard or, down in Sunrise, trotting out Luongo and Reimer and whoever else they had down there. But I mean, do you see them working as a tandem this year, or do you think one of them is going to be more of a, 70% of the starts and the other one's on spot duty?
I actually see it. So last year it was more of a 1A, 1B setup. And Gorgiev had some struggles in the middle of the season, and Igor just took off. And I think his contract that he got this offseason clearly shows that the Rangers believe in him as the number one goalie. Gorgiev is very interesting because, like you said, he can be a starter in most teams in the league. He still struggles on breakaways. I don't think the guy stopped the breakaway since he's been in the NHL. It's awful. But he's a very good goalie. He's a very good goaltender. But I do think Igor is going to be the number one. And I think he will play upwards of 55 games this year. Gorgiev, there was noise around him in the offseason. He's making over $2 million as a backup goalie, which is a lot. They have Keith Kincaid, who's kind of that third, taxi squad goalie, who's a very serviceable goalie as well. He's only making, I think, the NHL minimum or $900K. So a lot better as a salary as a backup goaltender. So a lot of Ranger fans were, when the Jack Eichel rumors are, I guess they're still circulating now, but Buffalo needs a goalie. Gorgiev would kind of fit that need for them. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, I got Kincaid, he can move in as a backup. And so a lot of people are rooting for that. And I think Gorgiev's camp was too, because it seems like he wants to be a starter. And once that Igor contract got handed down, I think that road in New York kind of closed for him. So I would not be shocked. And I actually just talked about this week on my podcast, I would not be shocked if he gets moved before the end of the season. Because he is an RFA. I think that his value might be the highest it'll ever be this year. To be honest with you, it was probably higher last year than is this year because he did have some struggles last year. But if a team's looking for a goalie, I've been pushing off on Colorado before they made their goalie change. Buffalo, all these teams that need goalies, who could we get from them? Who could get from them? So I just think that, I don't know. Gorgiev is very good. It's a great backup to have, but I think he wants more. And I don't know if that'll be a distraction from out this year.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head right there. Obviously an RFA probably doesn't figure into the Rangers' long-term plans. So if you were a betting man, do you see this as someone who is going to get probably moved at the trade deadline to help bolster that Rangers playoff push? Or do you think the Rangers might try and sign him again and maybe do a little sign and trade action with someone in the offseason? If you had to choose one or the other, which one seems more likely for you?
I think the more likely is he gets moved during the year. But I don't know if he's having a good season, the Rangers are in a playoff run, then yeah, maybe hold on to him for the offseason, move him at the draft or something, or like you said, a sign and trade deal later on. Or you do a Pavel Buchnevich trade where you move him for a draft pick and something else that can help your team next year. I just feel for some reason I have a gut feeling that some team's going to lose their goalie and it's going to be a package that Chris Drury just won't be able to say no to. And like I said, you've had you kind of have a backup plan in Keith Kincaid. It's not like you're bringing in a 21-year-old unproven goalie from the AHL. You're bringing in a proven NHL starter who had a good season last year for you in spot duty. So he can still get it done. I don't know. I have this weird feeling that he's not going to last the whole year in New York, but that's just because of the offseason and the weirdness that surrounded his agent and wanting a trade and not wanting a trade. Because it's tough for a guy to show up at the training camp after saying I want to be traded. So like they had to kind of like, oh, he didn't ever said that. But I know you got to think in the back of his mind, he's played well enough to be a starter. And it's tough to see the guy who came in after you get that contract and kind of take that number one role, where he was Lundqvist's backup for what was 2 years. He would play behind Hank.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when they moved Hank out, they basically made a decision like, okay, Gorgiev's going to be our backup. Hank, we're going to buy him out. Plus for money reasons wise, it made sense too. But the Rangers kind of committed to Gorgiev, and then he got passed by real quick by Igor. So it's an interesting dynamic, but I think they were rated on ESPN the number 6 goalie tandem, which I think is fair. I think that's a good spot to be in. But Igor Shasturk, if he has the season I hope he has and he delivers on his contract, it can be a really good looking deal going out, because I think they got him at a good price. I think Carter Hart made to sign a deal the next day that was even higher than his. So it already looks good already on paper. But the 5-year $22 million could look really good if Igor plays up to his potential. And he was an unbelievable player in Russia in the KHL. I mean, the guy was a big game goalie there, and he's done nothing but look good in New York so far. So I know Ranger fans were kind of down on him a little bit last year, but I think he's gonna have a good year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, at least he's got a little bit of plausible deniability with that. Did he request a trade? Did he not request a trade?
Yeah.
You look at Vladimir Tarasenko, like that's probably a bit of an awkward situation in that locker room, because there's no ambiguity with his demands.
I saw the other day that he was wearing an A too. I'm like, that's interesting. They got him as an A on the team. I don't know if that was like part of the agreement to bring him back, like we'll slap an A on you, but that was it. Yeah. Tarasenko was in the media saying I went out and basically saying I want to go to Long Island and play for the Islanders, and then he's back in St. Louis. So yeah, this was more of like, through the chatter, oh, Gorgiev wants a trade. It wasn't like Gorgiev was in the media, but yeah, it's a bad situation there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you already touched on it a little bit earlier on, but obviously Artemis Panerai, all-world talent, but we can say for, 2020, bit of an eventful year for him for a variety of reasons. And for those that maybe didn't hear the story, obviously there was whatever you want to call it, maybe a smear campaign via some Russian tabloids because of his political leanings and statements on Putin and all of that. But if we're looking at it from just a strictly hockey standpoint, he's back this year. He was on fire to end the year last year. He's currently coming in at plus 1,600, so 7th best odds to capture the Hart Trophy. In a perfect scenario where he is the league MVP, what needs to go right for him? Like lay the blueprint for me here.
Oh, geez.
How does Panarin capture league MVP?
He puts up 120 points. That's how he does it. He scores 40 goals and has 80 assists. That's what he does. And he avoids any off ice issue, blah, blah, all that kind of crazy stuff. The thing about Panarin that is interesting is if he plays for Russia or not at the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
You got to think he's probably the second best Russian player in the world. If you say Ovechkin's the best Russian player in the world, his father-in-law is the coach of Team Russia.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't just tabloids that were smearing him. It was like, the Russian Hockey Federation was, supporting it. Putin's like main guys were the ones that were doing it out there. So it'd be really interesting to see if he plays for Russia or not at the Olympics. As a Team USA supporter, I hope he doesn't. Give him 3 weeks off. As a Ranger fan, give him 3 weeks off would be great. But Panarin, he's played 2 preseason games already. He's looked unbelievable in both games. He looks in midseason form like it looks like the season never ended for him last year. He was so hot to end the year, like you said. Mm-hmm. His first year in New York, it took him a little bit, but like he was on fire. And I just don't see him slowing down this year. And again, his vision and passing is so good, but he can snipe like no one else in the NHL. Like you give him an inch and he'll take it right away. Last night he had a goal that you couldn't even see. It hit the pipe and went in. I don't even know how he saw the opening or how he shot. Why he would shoot it, but he found it almost like he put the puck on the side, to get it by Bernier. But he goes and puts up 40 points. 80 assists, which I think honestly he can do. He'll be he'll be right there for the Hart. Again, there's a lot of really good players in the league. There's a guy named Connor McDavid who seems like he's gonna win it every year, and McKinnon.
Hockey,
yeah, he's all right. McKinnon is a very good player. So There's a lot of really good guys in the league. So if he doesn't win it, I'm sure one of those guys had a crazy year, but I'm excited for Panarin to have a full season. And again, under Gallant, where I think he'll have a little more freedom offensively. And Capo Caco seems to be is going to play on that line. So it'd be interesting to see how they gel, because last year he didn't really play well with Caco. It was a whole thing that he might have preferred to play with Colin Blackwell instead of him, which was interesting because Colin Blackwell isn't really known as a second line forward in the NHL. As much as I like Colin, and unfortunately Seattle took him in the expansion draft. He's not back with the team, so Kako slides up. So it'll be interesting to see how the dynamic with him. But Ryan Strome has turned into a very good second line center with him. The two of them have really just clicked right away. And you know, the Rangers and Strome have a really weird relationship too, where he's kind of been on the trade block for like 2.5 years now, and he hasn't gone anywhere. And they have Jack Eichel kind of circling out there if he's going to come in. And, you know, obviously Strome would have to leave if he came in. So just an interesting dynamic. But Panarin, especially in the power play, he's so lethal. You know, Ovechkin is in his office. Panarin's got his office too. Although Ovechkin just, you know, shoots the puck 105 miles an hour by the goalie, Panarin is more of like, you know, kind of like Fox. Like, you can stand in front of the net and he'll bounce it off your kneecap and in the net. So he's just so skilled, and it's something the Rangers haven't had in so long. Probably the best free agent signing in Ranger history, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned Ovechkin there. You just look around the Metropolitan Division this year. Probably fair to say that it's maybe the most wide open it's been. Like, this isn't peak form Capitals. Like, this is an aging Washington team. Lots of question marks around Pittsburgh and the health of Malkin and Crosby and all that. So you look around, there's no real runaway, like, oh, they're clearly going to win this division this year. So if you're looking around, like, who do you view as the biggest threats to the Rangers? If the Rangers aren't going to win the division, like, who do you think would be the ones that are going to step up this year?
Yeah, like you said, the Metropolitan Division's kind of crazy. So you have the Islanders in Carolina, who I think are the top two teams in the division right now. They're the most complete teams. They've been very good for many years now. They're playoff tested. Carolina kind of got a taste of that Atlantic Division last year, going up against Tampa and Florida and battling those teams. And I think they're battle tested, Carolina. I think Carolina's really good. I think they had an upgrading goalie. You know, as much as I hate, you know, Ranger fans and people I hate it, Tony DeAngelo's going to be a great addition for that team. You know, all the baggage he brings, but he's a really good hockey player. He was the 12th. He came in 12th in the Norris Trophy the year before, you know, the whole issue with the Rangers. So he's a really good player they got for dirt cheap down there. So he's a great addition. And then the Islanders, I mean, they just get better every year, it seems like. You know, Anders Lee's back. Their goaltending's probably the best goalie tandem in the NHL. You know, Zach Parisi, the Ranger fans got rid of him years ago with New Jersey. Now he's back in the division. You just know Parisi's going to score 25 goals. Like, that's just going to happen probably. Chara is there now again. You know, who knows what he's going to do, but, you know, anytime you see Chara on the ice, it's not a good thing. So I think those are the two best teams. And then you got Pittsburgh, Philly, and Washington kind of, you know, right there, that are all very good teams. Ovechkin's never going to let the Capitals really, you know, lose. You know, they've been great for so many years with him. Pittsburgh, I think, is a team that might take a step backwards. So Crosby's hurt, Malkin's hurt. They didn't do really a lot this offseason. They improved that team. Their goaltending, I think, is still a question mark there. So I think this might be maybe the start to not the fall, but, like, you know, a little regression for the Penguins. And I think Philly is probably the team to watch. Their roster's really good. And their roster was really good last year too. They just, you know, Carter Hart really struggled last year. I don't know what his problem was. I think he was playing hurt. I don't know what his deal was, but, you know, if he gets going, I think Philly can be a really good team. As much as I hate to say it, because, you know, the rivalry between the Rangers and Philly is strong. And, you know, I think they got like 7 former Rangers down there now. Vigneault's got a whole team of former Rangers. They got, you know, Keith Yano's a nice addition for them, especially on the penalty on the power play. So I think Philly's gonna be good. And then the Rangers, obviously, I think, it'd be right there. In that, you know, it's gonna be a battle between those teams, I think, for that third spot and that maybe first or, you know, wild card there. New Jersey doesn't really do anything for me. I think they had some good additions. Dougie Hamilton was a good signing, but I still think, you got him and PK Subban making $20 million on your cap. Like, that's a lot to give two defensemen, which is kind of why it's tough for Trouba to have the deal he has now. And then you can give Fox a deal. So you kind of see what happened in New Jersey, where PK's kind of not really lived up to that contract. And they got issues in goalie there too. Mackenzie Black was not vaccinated, so he can't play some games. And, Bernier's kind of coming in after an okay season with Detroit, where he was good, but the team was terrible. So, what is his record indicating? Like, the team being bad, or is it him? So they're an interesting team, but I don't think they're a playoff team. And then Columbus, I think, unfortunately, is just they're rebuilding or whatever they're doing down in there. It's like coaching change and everything else. I think Columbus is unfortunately going to be the bottom of the division. But it's wide open, like you said. It could be 6 teams battling for a playoff spot to the very end. But if anything, it's going to be, and you look across the entire NHL, there's not too many teams you can be like, oh, they're terrible. There's a lot of really good parity in the NHL right now. A lot of teams that you can make a case for most divisions that have 5 or 6 teams that could be playoff contending teams. But the Metro, obviously, it's going to be tough coming out there. And not only that, just like tough teams. Like the Islanders are a tough team. Like the Washington's a tough team. So the Rangers toughening up is something that needed to happen. You could say it was too much of a snap decision after the Reeves incident. I mean, the Wilson incident. But they needed to get tougher in general. For years, they've been pushed around in that division. So it was good to see them add some guys. And one guy, I will say, I'm now in the fan club. I am a big fan of him, Sammy Blake.
You're the charter.
I am a huge Sammy
Blake's fan club.
I started the Kevin Rooney fan club last year. I think I'm still the only one in it. I am now adding Sammy Blake to the collection. That guy, he hits anything that moves. I don't think he cares if it's a ref, anything. He hits everything on the ice. He had a nice goal. He scored a couple goals in the preseason so far. He's going to play a 4th line role, playing the second power play unit, as he's going to park his 6'2" body in front of the net. He's wide as can be, so it's great for the power play. But I'm a big Sammy Blake supporter right now, so he's a guy to watch out for. If he has a big year, we'll play this clip back and say back in October, I said Sammy Blake will be a player to watch.
There you go. All right. Well, we hate to boil things down to 1 or 2 things needing to happen, but if you were gonna pinpoint like what the Ranger season really sort of hinges on, like what needs to go right if this team is going to be a playoff team this year?
3 things. There's 3 things that have to go right. Lafreniere and Kakko need to take that next step in their development. They just need to. If they don't have, the Rangers put too much stock in them, trading away Pavel Buchnevich, not adding another goal scorer, giving these kids that top 6 minutes, they have to produce. Lafreniere needs to score 30 goals. Kakko needs to have 20 goals. They need to contribute on special teams. That just has to happen for them. Number 2, Igor Shasturk needs to have a big year. He needs to live up to his new contract. They'll go as far as Igor can take them. He's a guy who can get very hot. If the Rangers come into the playoffs as a wild card team, if Igor's hot, they can make some noise, I think. And number 3 is I think they just need no off-ice distractions this year. Like that was like they just need to have no Tony DeAngelo distraction. They need to have no Panarin with Putin distraction. They don't need, COVID distraction. All this stuff that happened last year, the coaching staff having COVID for a month, for a week. They just had so many, you name the issues. It was crazy. I remember writing an article on Belly Up Sports that I think we're a month into the season or 2 months into the season. And I'm like, 7 things that happened. And it's it's been 60 days since the start of the season. Zibanejad getting COVID to start the year off. And then, the burner account for Tony DeAngelo going off and while they're on their first away trip. And then Tony DeAngelo, quote unquote, getting to an argument and pushing match with Gorgiev in the locker room. And then, it's like, what is next with this team? And then finally they got so hot towards the end, they make the run and they just ran out of time. But if they can stay away from any off ice distraction or stuff like that, I think they're a 90+ point team that is right there in the playoff race.
Amazing. Well, Kyle, we could sit here all day talking New York Rangers with you, but for those that do want to get more New York Rangers information or tune into any of your podcasts or articles or any of that good stuff you got going on, where are the best places to find you these days?
Yes. So I host a podcast for the Rangers. It's called It's called the Broadway Hat Podcast. You can find on Twitter at Broadway Hat Pod, or on Instagram and Facebook at the Broadway Hat Podcast. You can, just follow me at KHallNY on Twitter. I tweet during most Ranger games. I usually have most, updates. I put them out there. I'm the beat reporter for Belly Up Sports. So go check out bellyupsports.com. And I post all my articles on both accounts. So game recaps, updates, injury updates, cover it all. But yeah, and then hopefully we're starting up the YouTube channel for the podcast. It seems like everyone wants to be on YouTube now, so I'm trying to figure that out. And this week's newest episode should be the first one on there. We played around with it way back when we first started the show, and we couldn't really figure out the whole we got the video going, but it didn't do much. So we have a new strategy going now, so we're gonna get that going. So make sure you go check us out on YouTube. I think it's just the Broadway Hat Podcast. Just search it on YouTube, but and you can find the show anywhere you stream. On Amazon Music, Google Play, Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. Go check it out. We have just had 94 Stanley Cup champion Mike Hartman on. Mike Hudson. We have Mike Hartman coming on soon. We've had current players on, former players on. So we go kind of talk about their careers and kind of get the behind the scenes story of where they were and try to get some good stories no one's heard about. We just had Kevin Miller on, who was played for the Rangers and I think he played for 9 teams. So there's half the NHL he played with. So you hear some great stories from those guys. So go check it out. And thanks for having me on today.
Anytime. All right. Well, we'll see what has in store for the 2021 version of the New York Rangers. As you say, hopefully a little bit less off-ice drama, though, surrounding this season.
It helps writing, but doesn't help the team.